Now, this is the killer of all practice right here. How many of you have ever done a task in your office that it wasn't doctorly? How many of you ever fixed the printer or taken out the garbage, okay, or vacuumed the hallway? Anybody ever do those kinds of things? I did it. I'll raise my hand. These are what I call items below your pay grade. Okay? You can make as much as you want, but I say that you should at least make as much as a great attorney. If you went to school for 7 or 8 or 9 years, you should at least make $500 an hour, right? Would you pay somebody $500 an hour to vacuum? Would you pay somebody $500 an hour to mow your yard? Would you pay somebody $500 an hour to come in and fix your computer, fix your printer? And the answer should be no, unless you're insane and you just have too much money and you're just throwing away your money. But doing things below your pay grade is a crusher, because what it does, if you have the capacity to make what you want and you spend your time on those things and you outsource the other things, then you free up the time and the energy and the effort in your life to be bigger, better, stronger, grow a better practice. So what happens is oftentimes we get stuck doing things below our pay grade, or we get distracted from the core values or the core mission of the practice. How many of you have written down or written out your core values? So not everyone's hand went up. So homework assignment this weekend. Before you go home, I want you to write out what your core values are. What is your mission statement? What is it that your practice and that your mission statement is? You need to know what it is. Why? How do you know how you're going to make a successful practice if you don't even know what the core mission of your practice is? In other words, in order to create a roadmap to that success, you have to know at the very least what is your inner core. And so if you know what that is, then these types of things right here will not distract you. How many of you ever got a flyer in the mail and it said, new patient generating system, 30 new patients a day, right? And anybody ever seen something like that come in? And then you're like, yeah, okay, and then you get distracted and you go make that phone call and you talk to these people and you spend a few $1,000s and it doesn't pan out because it was really not true. And then you get another thing in the mail, a month later or so, and it's like, new system to treat patients, earns thousands of extra dollars a month, right? And it's this new machine or this new gimmick or this new thing, and then you go over there and you try that for a little while. Anybody ever done that? Anybody ever bought one of those decompression machines? Any chiropractors in the room ever bought a decompression table? I did. $60,000 damn table, and horrible model. And maybe some people make it successful, but it was not in alignment with who I was. I wasn't there to do decompression. I wasn't there to do a gimmicky thing. And so all these shiny objects that come to you, they put you in this rabbit hole of distraction, this perpetual distraction away from what you should really be focusing on. And that focus should be your 5%. Now, what do I mean by 5%? 95% of the shit you do in a day isn't what you should be focused on. There should be 5% of what you're really good at. There's only one doctor in the office unless you have multiple practitioner office, right? So seeing patients is in your 5%. Developing protocols is in your 5%. Working on your practice, marketing is in your 5%. Staying relevant, in other words, keeping updated with science and literature, is in your 5%. And if you've got a family should be in your 5%. Your children should be in your 5%, right? Those are your 5% of the things that you should be focused on doing and not being distracted by the 95% of distractions. Because that's what they are. They're the things that take you away from the things that you're good at. And if you're over here doing a job that you could outsource for $8 an hour or $10 an hour, then you're not making $500 an hour focusing on your 5%. Does anybody have that problem? Okay, does anybody ever do their own stuff they know they shouldn't be doing? How many of you use internet technology to outsource a lot of the headache, small things in a practice. How many of you even know what I'm talking about when I say internet technology? How many of you use emails? Anybody here use emails? We're going to be talking a lot about that this weekend. So ultimate growth happens here. When I discovered this, I had a mentor about 10 years ago who taught me this. And when I discovered this right here, focusing in laser sharp on these things, okay, it was the end of failure in practice, meaning that if I stayed here, practice success was virtually guaranteed. When I deviated from this, you could watch your numbers slip, you could watch your numbers fall, you could watch things not work quite as well. So focusing on my patients, focusing on leveraging my practice, which we're going to be talking about this weekend, focus on predictable outcomes in your marketing, predictable outcomes in your treatment plans. Things that are predictable, by definition, it's like having your own crystal ball, right? If they're predictable, it's almost as if they're being guaranteed. So we focus on what we can predict. We focus on what is predictable. And we focus on staying up to date and educated. And we focus on the relationships, the marketing relationships, the business relationships that we have. And we outsource the other things, the housekeeping, the office computer maintenance, the tasks that take your time and are below your pay grade. How many of you feel like you should make good money? Okay, so going back to focusing on what's below your pay grade, if you're the janitor in your office, right, is that below your pay grade? And so a lot of people will say, yeah, but I'm starting out, and really I'm going to be doing these things, and I'm not going to really hire that out. It'll take too much time, and you're just going to do it myself, because if I do it myself, it'll be right. All that's BS, and it's all distraction from what's really important. So you don't want to get stuck in this rut right here, because this is a freedom killer. And when I say freedom killer, I mean it sucks all of your time. If you're working, I work a 21-hour clinic. And I generally will, aside from preparing for something like this, I'll generally try to work a 40-hour work week. I'll work 21 hours in my clinic. I'll work 19 hours on my online pieces. And that's really all I want to do. I don't want to really do more than that. But if I did this, if I focused on this, I'd be the entrepreneur with my own business working 60, 80, 100 hours a week. How many of you been in that rut? How many of you been there? Get out of that rut and go here. Focus. This is a 10,000-foot overview of a successful practice. We have an office. And I don't know how well you can see that, and we can get you these slides if you'd like them, and that way you can read them a little bit better. But you've got your office, and you should have an internet platform, and your internet platform is in essence an extension of your office marketing arm. And that's part of passive revenue as well, but passive revenue is also things like supplement sales that you have within your office. If you're doing it right, if you have long-term compliance, you should have a lot of passive revenue generation from recurring customers, from recurring patient buys. And then we have your brain lab. And part of this brain lab is your mindset. It's who you are. It's your mindset and how you look at the world and how you view the world. But part of this brain lab is also how you, let me back up for just a minute. It's how you focus on this 5%, and it's how you come up with ideas that aren't distractive ideas. In essence, everything should be coordinated and with a purpose. So when we're in our brain lab and we're trying to think what new can we do in our practice, or what new types of services or new kinds of values that we're going to add to our practice and how that best serves our patient, the question shouldn't be, okay, this new little gimmick is going to make me a bunch of money. Let me distract a lot of time and energy and effort away over here to this thing that doesn't line up with my core values, right? This should be very well thought out. So when we give you a perfect example, how many of you watched the Autoimmune Revolution? Did anybody watch the online summit, the Autoimmune Revolution? So that was one of my brain children, right? We wanted to put together a summit. And so before we even began the process of entertaining, putting together the summit, the very first question I asked is, how is that going to serve my office? How's that going to serve my existing patient base? How's that going to grow my business? And how's that going to align with my core values? And so before I even began entertaining such a massive project, we had to make sure that it lined up with the mission. And once it lines up with the mission, then you can start pulling the trigger. By the way, that event serviced over 65,000 attendees. And of those 65,000 attendees, we now have an email list that's that large and larger that we pulled from the event. So how much money do you think you can make from an email list that has 65,000 people on it who are all customers? You see what I'm saying? And 5% of that list actually bought the summit. The summit revenue itself earned almost $500,000 in revenue. So that's my point. Your brain lab, it needs to be well thought out. And a big part of the summit was I didn't want to confuse my existing clients and my existing email list. So when we designed the summit, we created an entirely different model for summits. We created an indoctrinization on the last day of the summit where I took all of the speakers that we had, all these wonderful, great speakers who had a lot of great thoughts, and I took the best of all of their ideas, and I created a presentation that brought in everyone's ideas, but I made it cohesive, and I made it make sense, and I put it in alignment with the core values that I have in my clinic, so that on the last day of the summit, we basically indoctrinated 65,000 people into becoming new patients. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's why it aligned with our mission. That's why it didn't distract from, I don't want to distract people from my message. I don't want to distract people from what I feel is the right path for them to take. So we had to have a way to make this summit not just confuse everyone, because you know every doctor's got a different opinion. And it doesn't make their different opinions wrong. It just makes it based on their experiences. We wanted to bring all those opinions into my fold, so to speak, and we wanted to bring those patients online with the mission at Origins Healthcare in my clinic. And so we did that. And so not only did we earn close to $500,000 in revenue, but my phones haven't quit ringing for the last 3 to 4 weeks. We sold an extra 1,000 copies of the book. So this was very much in line with growing this. Does that make sense?